I am Cadet 3rd Class Nathan Janota from Detachment 028 Air Force ROTC, and today I will be illustrating to you how to iron your long sleeve blues uniform for your service dress. Now, this, as you can see, is actually pretty clean already. It's pretty nice, neat, ironed. I'm going to show you what you can do when the shirt is entirely messed up. First of all, if your uniform has already been pre-worn, you're going to want to remove all of your ranks, your soft ranks, and your name tag. When you iron, your holes that you created with your name tag will automatically heal, so you're going to want to memorize where you put your name tag, and don't always rely on those holes. They won't always be there. If you have any additional accessories on your uniform, you're also going to want to remove those as well, and that includes the Arnold Air Society thing. So this is my shirt, nice and clean. For the sake of illustration, I'm going to give this a good crumple. Wad it up just like most of the college students I know who throw it right on their floor. Sadly, it's still very pretty, but you'll get the idea. First of all, the supplies you're going to need to iron your long sleeve blues. First and foremost, you're going to need your set of long sleeve blues. Second, an iron. You're going to want an iron that has either an iron or a steel faceplate. You don't want a stainless steel because it's actually going to stain your shirt and it might stick. And finally, you're going to want starch. I prefer heavy starch because you can get a really nice, crisp, clean look, and it also makes creasing your uniform much easier. And finally, of course, you want a very good ironing board. The first part of our long sleeve blues that we're going to iron is the collar. You're going to iron both sides of the collar, but you're only going to stiff starch one side. If you fold your collar down, as if you're wearing it, you'll see that this upper part here, is the part that's going to be showing. Therefore, you're going to want to starch the underside. Why? Well, if you starch both sides, it'll start turning your shirt yellow after a while, and no matter how much you wash it, the stain's not going to go away. That, and if you iron incorrectly with starch, you might carbonize it and leave black spots all over your uniform. Alright, first of all, grab your starch so you can starch your collar. Just give it a light, spray all the way across just so you see it turn damp. Now you're going to want to let the starch settle for a second, so when you start seeing these little bubbles, this little bit of fizzing on here, that means it's ready to iron. All you do is hold it taut and go across. Put a lot of pressure onto your collar. You want this to look the best. Now there's a difference between pressing and ironing. Dry cleaners will press your uniform. All they do is hold the iron down and go from spot to spot. Ironing is actually moving your iron back and forth across the collar. Now, you're going to flip it over and do the outer part of the collar. This is the part that you will see during an inspection. Okay. A nice, crisp, clean collar. Now that you finish that, you're actually going to move on to what's called the yoke, which is the part that goes right across the shoulders from epaulette to epaulette. You're going to want to flatten it all out. Again, grab your starch, give it a shake, and gently go across. Let it settle. Then come back with the iron. And just go across. Remember, you're going to have these tiny little creases on the edge, called creaselets. If you look right here, you can see just a tiny bit of ribbing on it. That's okay. Every shirt along its seam is going to have a little bit of that. If you're looking to go super ultra clean, you can actually iron your epaulettes. I recommend you do this with the soft ranks on because your soft ranks often need ironing. Make sure to take out your metal stiffeners though. You don't want to cook your stiffeners, you can damage them. Alright, so we have our collar and our yoke completed. Now we're going to move on to the sleeves. Sleeves are the tricky part of a uniform. You want that nice, crisp, clean seam from the shoulder all the way to the cuff. And that can often be very, very, very difficult to get. So one thing you want to make sure you do is you flatten out the sleeve. If you look right here, there's a natural seam that's already been sewed in for you. If you take that, put it at the edge, and then push the shirt out, you'll naturally flatten it. You'll also want to unbutton your cuff. Again, grab your starch, give it a quick spray. With the tip towards the top, the shoulder, iron directly across. Use the natural curve of your iron to get into the natural seam on the shoulder. You want to put a lot of pressure, especially on the edge of the shirt, because that's where you're making that crease. You want to avoid railroad tracks. So, by making a sharp crease, you can guarantee that you won't have a double seam running across your shoulder. Now for the tip of the sleeve. Okay. And then go over it one last time to make sure that you got rid of all the wrinkles. Now the tricky part is flipping over the next part of the sleeve. Grab the seam at its finest point and flip it straight over. Flatten it again, but this time you're using this seam as a reference. Again, this is to avoid railroad tracks. If you were to use this as a reference, the seam pops up, which causes you to do a double seam. You don't want that. Or a double crease. Okay, grab your starch again. I double starch all my sleeves because I like my sleeves really stiff. You don't have to do that. You can actually just use a little bit of water from your iron and that'll do the same thing. Holding the tip, go across and re-emphasize that crease. And work your way over to the actual sewn-in seam. Again, use the natural curve of your iron to get through the shoulder. And a reminder that you want to remember, especially when you're working on the sleeves, is never stop moving the iron. It'll burn your sleeve very quickly. Pick it up gently and move on to your cuff. Give it a good press. Nice and crisp. And finish off with the tip of your cuff collar. And then finally go back one more time to eliminate any creases you may have ironed in that you didn't intend to. That's one sleeve done. Next sleeve. And notice where your crease goes. Your crease actually goes straight to the tip of your epaulet. So if you're careful in your ironing, you'll never have to re-crease the shirt again. You'll always have a crease already ready for you. Flip it over so the button side is up. Again, starting from the base seam that's already laid out for you. You're going to flatten the whole shirt. Unbutton the cuff. Grab your starch. Give it a good spray. Now gently go back and forth. Starting from the bottom, working your way to the top. When you get to the top, apply firm pressure so this is going to make an obvious definitive crease. Always keep your fabric taut. If you don't keep it tight, you're going to iron creases where you just finished ironing, which will defeat the whole purpose. Get near the cuff. Remember, the cuff also has a natural seam, so be careful where you iron. Alright, flip it over. Remember, you're using this part right here, the razor's edge, to iron the rest of the shirt. Flatten it out from the top down. Flatten your cuff, make sure there's no wrinkles underneath. Give it a double spray if you really like having a heavily starched shirt. And go over it again. This time, top to bottom. Put a lot of effort and work into that crease. I know for one, when I was a flight standardization officer, there's nothing that's prettier than a perfectly ironed uniform. And for those of you who jumped at the word pretty, don't worry. You can also use anything ranging from sexy to professional. Alright, go over your cuff, give it a nice amount of pressure, and pull back, and make sure you went over all of your seams and creases. And one more time. Flatten it out. And finish it at the shoulder. Okay, now the trick is, you don't want to let this shirt fall on the floor at any time. If you do, it's going to start wrinkling again. Now, for the front panel of the shirt, we're not going to iron it face up. We're going to actually iron it inside out, face down. The reason for this is, this pocket here has an indentation in it. If you iron it from the other side, you're going to iron a lot of wrinkles into the bottom. So what happens is, when you put it on, it does that and bunches up on you. You want your pocket to look nice, crisp, and clean. So you're going to start from the underside. Give it a starch. Don't starch your pocket too heavily. And go along your buttons. And starting from the bottom, putting a good amount of pressure, work your way to the top. When you get to the pocket, there's a cool trick you want to learn. First of all, start at the top of the pocket, putting the base of your ironing right here, right against the natural seam of the pocket where it joins with the shirt. Then what you want to do, see this line right here? This line is naturally caused by the pocket flap. Put your iron so its tip is underneath the buttonholes, and just iron up to that point, making sure it's nice and defined. It'll flatten the entire pocket except for the pocket flap, which we'll get to in a minute. As you can see, very nice and smooth. Now you're going to actually flip it over, making sure to put the tip of the shirt over the horn of the ironing board. Give it a lighter starch this time, and don't touch the pocket. Not on the front side. And starting from the bottom, work your way up. Iron the top of the pocket, just above it. And then iron around it. Once you get to the pocket, here's the trick you want to learn. I call it 3D pop-out flaps. In this case, all you want to do is take the tip of your iron and slip it right in underneath that pleat. You're just going to go back and forth, putting gentle pressure on it. Go to the other side and do the same thing. Then you're going to gently go over and iron the whole thing. Iron both sides of your pocket flap, and you have a beautifully ironed pocket. Now flip it over. The other side. This is the button side, not the buttonhole side. Be careful with the placard with the buttons, by the way. Running over these tiny little threads will often tear them out and create cords, or Irish pennons, as I was told you were called. Again, starch it. Give the pocket a good starch. And go from the bottom and work right at the top. Go above the pocket. What you do is you're going to go around each of the threads that marks a button. Just go in between. You should flatten it gently. And then go once more over your shirt because you're likely to have snagged some of those cords. Now, again, we're going to put the tip of the iron underneath, and iron straight up to the pocket. You want to define that straight edge near the pocket flap so that you're flattening the pleat on the other side. Now, flip it over. Starch the front panel again, but don't touch the pocket, just like the last panel we did. Start from the bottom. Remember to work your way in between the buttons. You can go over your pocket here to get in between the buttons. Just make sure not to iron the pocket flap quite yet. Iron over it. Now, again, you're going to put the tip of your iron underneath so you pop out that pleat. Just go over it. Be careful on the button side, it's easy to snag a button. There you are. Now, finally, the panels. The back panels are very simple, straightforward. Place the very tip of your yoke right here at the horn of the ironing board and starch the entire thing. You don't have to starch this part too heavily. This part of the shirt is often going to be tucked in, and the part that you do see is going to be hidden by your service dress. You just want to make sure that if you take your service dress off, you don't look sloppy. Once you complete that section, you're going to move on to the next part, the center of the back. Again, give it a good starch. Working your way from the bottom towards the top. Use large sweeping motions so you can cover the entire shirt in very little time. And finally, the right side of the back. And go over it, bottom to top. Once you've completed your blues, you're not going to want to fold them. You're going to want to make sure to fold the collar back, as though you're wearing it, and hang it up directly in the center. And that is how to iron long sleeve blues.